you're like bathed in sunlight there, and I just look like I'm in a dungeon somewhere. At Guidestones, we do a lot of work with brands, and we're very unique in the sense that we use very different forms of financing, one of them being brands and brand partnerships. I believe that this is a really important step forward in terms of creating content, especially content that's going to be disseminated online. However, it's not easy.
We've never had a meeting with Fresh Baked where someone's gone, "This is ridiculous, forget it." Everybody's always like, "Okay, cool." We had one with a gum company. In fact, one of the first meetings we did, the brand manager was like, "This is awesome. Could we be the first ones to do it?" We walked out going, "This is amazing. They're gonna jump up." Never did anything.
But they were first, maybe not do it.
Exactly. I should have qualified what he meant by first.
I'll be the first one to close the door on you as you leave the room.
I thought he said close the deal. Oh.
In Guidestones, we worked with a number of brand partners, and that has been extremely effective for us, and we will be using more brand partners as we move forward. But it's important to know that brands do not move quickly. Brands are very cautious, and brands only get involved in things that are going to help them. So it's really important to nurture relationships with brands.
I think you have to think about, you are an entertainment platform swimming in a marketer's pool, right? So you have to think in terms of what's best for them and from a brand messaging standpoint. And the one thing I talk about a lot with these guys is that, it's not about pushing your product, because you're going to do everybody a disservice. You need to just have authentic entertainment that you're aligned to. So from a creative standpoint, you have to think of what's best for both the show and the marketer. But then from an executional standpoint, you got to think about their timing and their plans and their finances.
Know your brand. Get to know what's on their agenda. And while this may be anathema to a filmmaker, the fact is that if you can incorporate your content into the plans of the brand, you're going to have a much more successful experience in terms of trying to get brands involved in your content.
So I think the first thing you need to do is, if you're doing a series about some guys that like to party, and you think, "Oh, I'll go to Molson's." It's not that simple. You got to really think about what the brand values are and what messaging they're trying to hit and who their key audience is. Is it male, female? They're going after, you know what I mean? You have to know all, and you can find that out, I think, simply by looking at what they're doing and really drilling down to who they're actually trying to get to. But then you need to have that conversation because you don't know that they're not changing their direction. Like a lot of brands go into, we want to get away from this and into that. And then if you go to the bigger marketers, like the meeting today with this automotive place, they got a bunch of brands. So you might go, "Hey, this is good for brand A," and they're like, "Actually, it'd be good for brand C."
Is there a future for this? Is there a future for branded entertainment? Is branded online entertainment a threat to traditional broadcast? Is the old television model dead? Or is it just something different?
When I went through the, comparing apples to apples, the cost per thousand of who sees the programming, and from the TV side, I started to deduct who isn't seeing it. People going to the bathroom or flipping the channel, because you're not comparing apples to apples. This is apples to oranges. And I feel like because this is a new space, that marketers, but people in general, are holding it to a higher standard. Like it's got to deliver this kind of special holy grail of my sales went up. And it's like, well, we can deliver more engagement and we can track it better than your commercials, but nobody can connect the watching something on this computer or on TV to literally walking in and buying something in the store. The question was, is there a future in it? I do think there's a future in it. I just don't know when.
In some ways our industry is very established and has very specific practices, and it takes a long time to change those practices. I mean, it's a big ship, and it takes time to turn that ship. And while I sometimes feel frustrated because I want it to turn faster, the fact is that sometimes it's good when things take a bit of time to change, because then the changes can be gradual and less knee-jerk and more specific and maybe more productive.
This system has been done one way for 60 years. When television first started, it was brought to you by brands. It's called the soap operas because Procter and Gamble brought them to you. There were all kinds of brand integration and paid for by brands. And then it switched to this interruptive model where they would stop the show and show brand messaging within the show. There are people that have gotten fat from that, right? I mean, it's a good payday, and it's an older model that has worked fine for 60 years. But as soon as the web came along and PVRs came along, it's all turned on its head. So I think a lot of this is this is, to your point, it's a big ship to turn around. So who's going to turn this around first, the advertising agency or the actual marketers? What I've seen is it's the actual marketers.
And I actually see you kind of kicking at the ship a little bit too.
I think I'm the little tugboat trying to pull the ship around.